Alright, so UFC Noche is this weekend. This dog ain't even gonna be there. But we got a lot to talk about. A lot of Mexican fighters, Marab and Sean. They're my two favorite Mexican fighters. Let's just jump right into this breakdown. Let's get into it. We got the man, the myth, the legend, Chiwiwis himself versus Aoriqi Long in the first fight of UFC Noche. Aoriqi Long has been submitted twice by rear naked choke outside of the UFC, and that's what Raul Jr. does, is just take the back and use his tight body triangle and control the opponent and hopefully submit them. This is what Raul Jr. wants to do, is be able to find the takedown against Aoriqi Long, who is a wild striker. Shown in his fight against Molina, he got dropped twice and was knocked out by Zahabi in the first round. Being a hyper-aggressive fighter, Aoriqi Long could get taken down by Raul Rosas Jr. Raul Rosas Jr. wants to get this fight to the ground. Ideally, he doesn't want to stand and bang with someone like Aoriqi Long, who doesn't really seem to care for his well-being and just wants to knock you out. Being a hyper-aggressive fighter, though, this could get Aoriqi Long taken down. Also, one of the times he was dropped by Molina, Molina was able to slide into the full mount very easily, and a grappler such as Raul Rosas Jr. could do this exact thing. He even did it against Terrence Mitchell. He dropped him, went to side control, then slid into full mount, then flattened him out on his belly to get the TKO win. Chiwiwis traded a little bit at the beginning of his fight with Ricky Tercios, showing that he will match the offense thrown at him. He countered a front kick hook combo thrown from Tercios, but countered this into a takedown. Similarly, when Aoriqi Long threw a front kick, he got dropped. I could see Raul Rosas Jr. waiting for this front kick to happen and finding a way to take him down. Raul Rosas Jr. is going to be levels ahead of Aoriqi Long on the ground. Aoriqi Long only has one submission, coming by armbar back in 2019 throughout his entire career. And although Raul got his back taken from Ricky, he's able to turn when he has his back taken so many times just because his waist is so small and get into a dominant position. And seconds after getting his back taken by Ricky, he was able to do this and get Ricky's back. And being on the back, this is where he wants to be. This is the best position for him. He has 6 submission wins, 3 by rear naked choke. And his body triangle is so tight that these caliber of fighters, these non-ranked opponents, are probably not going to be able to escape his grasp. Also, when Aoriqi Long dips his head to the side a little, I could see Raul Rosas Jr. coming up with a big knee like he did against Ricky Tercios. Sometimes this man doesn't stay composed and he likes to scramble and throw a lot and just be overall wild. And you never know when with someone like Aoriqi Long who has that dog in him, he can maybe make something happen, maybe make a shot land or gas Raul Rosas Jr. out like he did in his UFC loss. However, I think that being such a young fighter, I mean only 19 years old, he's only going to get better each and every time that we see him. And that's why I'm going to make Raul Rosas Jr. Chiwiwis himself. I'm going to go with him. I'm going to go with the much younger favorite. I think he's going to get a submission in the second round and make it look relatively easy. Alright, so the next fight is Manuel Torres versus Ignacio Bahamondes. I think this fight's going to be a banger. So Manuel Torres, he's 15-2, 7 KOs, 7 submissions. Every other single win he finished in the first round. He's got 2 submission losses, 1 to a heel hook and 1 to a knee bar, both under 90 seconds, also in the first round. History shows that it's going to end early. Sometimes he comes up short with the shots, but he's so explosive and quick to close that distance when he actually fully commits with his shots, like he did with that elbow against Camacho. He can run into problems being the much shorter and smaller fighter, running into shots like he did against Chris Duncan in their first exchange. I mean, he's only 5'10", and Ignacio Bahamondes is 6'3", with a 2.5-inch reach advantage on him, you know? Torres' head movement really consists of leaning back with not much of a guard. If Bahamondes starts to get loose and throw much longer combinations, Torres could get pieced up by leaning back. I mean, leaning back against these smaller fighters is okay, but once you find a striker like Bahamondes who's much longer, defending by leaning back isn't going to help. In Torres' grappling sequences, he'll opt to look for submissions rather than defense and control. He'll dive on these submissions and get put in worse positions, but sometimes it does work out for him. He's able to find the finish. I don't think Bahamondes is going to look to put this fight to the ground, but if it does, I think he's going to be able to control, stay calm, and get out of those grappling sequences. Torres' jab is super fast and snappy, but he can kind of telegraph it a little bit, and I think the taller, longer Bahamondes is going to use his great timing to come over the top with the big right hand. Torres' strategy in this fight needs to stay active in a way that'll confuse Ignacio. Manuel Torres needs to utilize 1s and 2s and feint off of those. However, he telegraphs a lot and flares his elbows out. I think Bahamondes is going to be able to catch and time it a little bit. If you can throw 1-2s without telegraphing much, Bahamondes will go into a high guard, and I think Torres might be able to slip in some of his powerful uppercuts or use a check hook to counter whenever Bahamondes enters. This man's so wildly unorthodox that you never really know what he's going to do. He can pull off some crazy trips or some crazy moves. So Ignacio Bahamondes is 15-5, 10 KOs, 1 submission win, and 2 submission losses. Only rear naked choke and armbar loss early in his career. I think he's learned from that. This man's fighting all the time. He's very young. He's only going to get better also, just like Raul Rosas Jr. However, he's much, much slower than Manuel Torres is. He landed the head kick on Christos Giagos, who is the exact same height as Manuel Torres, actually. In this fight, Bahamondes was able to beat Giagos to the punch almost every time. He was able to time those shots coming from Giagos and would exit pretty good, but I think Giagos was slower than Bahamondes, and Bahamondes is slower than Torres is. So that speed, combined with his 73-inch reach compared to the 71-inch reach of Giagos, it could pose different problems. He could also use his long teep kicks to keep Torres off of him and stab at that gas tank. Whenever Torres tries to enter that distance, I think Bahamondes should use his long teep kicks to keep Torres off of him and just stab at that gas tank. Keep stabbing, use that long reach. But I think it would benefit Manuel Torres to stand his ground rather than leaping in or continuing to back up. Manuel Torres should stand his ground and wait for Ignacio Bahamondes to engage and then slip so that Bahamondes can close that distance for him, being the much longer opponent, and then Manuel Torres can explode into his counterattacks off the slip. It wouldn't benefit him to try and chase the much larger opponent down. Bahamondes will sometimes throw his shots out there lazily, like he did against Roosevelt Roberts and Magdeski, so he can become somewhat predictable throwing shots at the same tempo over and over and over. I think he needs to slow, fast, and not just boom, 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 boom. Bahamondes needs to mix up his speed in this fight. What Emmanuel Torres needs to do in this fight is find a way to back Bahamondes up to the cage. He needs to crowd Bahamondes whenever he's backing up to the cage and make the reach and kicks of Bahamondes practically useless. He's going to be much faster in the clinch and get more shots off. In the center, Torres can combine the crowding with feints to draw out those bigger attacks from Bahamondes, such as the spinning kicks and just head kicks in general. Bahamondes, whenever he's pressured, he'll usually look to counter with that big right hand. If they get into the tight clinch, I could see Torres landing the bigger shots, especially mixing it to the body. There's a lot of surface area on that long body. So with that being said, I think I'm going to go with Ignacio Bahamondes for this fight. I don't think Manuel Torres is going to be able to utilize feints and overall strategy. I think he's going to be looking for those big shots. Bahamondes is going to be able to use his reach and stay away, especially being in a much larger cage now. I mean, opposed to the Apex where both these guys were fighting. Being in the larger cage, it's going to benefit Bahamondes a lot more. And he's just going to be able to circle, and drag Manuel Torres deeper into the fight. He's only been past the first round once, whereas Bahamondes has plenty of experience to go along with his career. So with that, I think Bahamondes is going to get a third round TKO or decision win. Alright, on to the main card. We got Brian Ortega versus Diego Lopez. This is going to be a banger of a match. It's going to be way better than the last one. If the last one's not fight of the night, this one's going to be fight of the night. Two jiu-jitsu black belts with granite shins and insane power. Alright, so Brian Ortega in his last fight with Yair Rodriguez, he didn't really move his head that well when engaging with Yair, causing him to get dropped. I still think that after the Holloway, Volk, and Yair fights, Ortega's chin should be solid. I mean, he has pretty good recovery. It may not be what it once was, but he can still take a punch at least. I don't think Ortega wants to engage too much on the ground with Lopez, because of the way he will always die for submissions in a much better way than our last fight. I mean, he went for crazy submissions against Movsar Evloev. Ortega wants to get Lopez down. He should be using the body straights or reach down whenever Lopez goes for leg kicks and take him down like Evloev did. Or whenever he goes for those body straights or reaches down, he could come up top with a big overhand like he did against Volk or the Korean Zombie. If he can somehow get into Lopez's guard, he can pound him out from this position. In Yair Rodriguez's guard, he was able to split him open. Evloev was able to beat up Lopez from this position, and Diego's actually been KO'd from here. I don't know how no one's talked about it. He's been KO'd from being in guard. On the feet, Ortega has already faced people that utilize reach and distance much better than Lopez, I think. Volk was able to piece him up with mostly straights, and Yair would use the kicks to keep the distance away. But with Lopez, I think he's going to jump on him. Even though he has a longer reach than Ortega, I don't think the reach is going to matter that much because he doesn't utilize it. Lopez's main attacks are the big hooks and uppercuts. I think Ortega should go with those straights to the body and stab away at that gas tank. If he can do this properly and drag Lopez into those deeper rounds, I think that we could see Ortega take the second and third round away from Lopez. Against Danige in their third round, Lopez showed to slow down much more. Granted, he basically weighed in 3 times, 146 the day before weigh-ins, 155 whenever Ortega got sick, and then whenever Ortega finally pulled out, Dan Ige stepped in on a few hours' notice. So Ige kind of had an advantage of not draining himself and no sleepless nights, nothing like that against Lopez, but he still slowed down drastically compared to that first round. If Ortega can get Lopez down, Lopez can sometimes be content with being off his back, throwing up submissions and whatnot. But I think that someone as clean as Ortega will be able to stay defensive and pound away. Ortega will also sometimes switch to southpaw against orthodox fighters to get that open stance where he can throw that big rear kick. He did this against Volk and the Korean Zombie, and Lopez is an orthodox stance fighter too. Ortega can absolutely not get backed up to the fence with a much faster Lopez will be able to get the bigger shots in. If Lopez can back Ortega up, I can see him landing big hooks and big uppercuts, hurting Ortega very badly. I think that Lopez probably hits harder than Ortega in this fight. Ortega wants to keep this fight in the center, where he can draw out those big attacks from Lopez. Ortega's already been in some brutal wars that reached the championship rounds, and Lopez's gas tank might not be there. Ortega needs to stay composed, but kind of let Diego dictate the pace of the fight because he's so wild. Maybe not dictate, but draw up these large attacks from Diego Lopez. This is going to be a much different stylistic matchup for Ortega because he's so used to running into a lot of damage to get his opponents down and hopefully find the submission. But here he needs to do what he did against the Korean Zombie and pick his shots when Diego exposes himself. Lopez can make it very obvious when he charges into opponents with his windups. He loves to throw those big hooks and big right uppercut when there's little distance between them. If Ortega or Lopez crowds the other, I could see Lopez getting more shots off in a tight space than Ortega would. I think this fight is mostly going to be contested in the stand-up. Ortega's wrestling hasn't really been shown to be good enough to consistently get fighters down, and even when he does, he got put in a guillotine against Yair, and I think someone of Diego Lopez's caliber in the grappling department is going to be able to cinch up a submission. Also, Lopez will not want to shoot on Ortega either because that's where Ortega's world class. He's okay with it. I mean, look what he did. He almost finished Volk. He almost got Volk out of there with a submission, and he finished his last guy with a submission. In the past, we've seen fighters with great grappling go and have a great stand-up war. I think it's going to be Brian Ortega looking for those ones and twos. I see Ortega doubling up on his jab to piece up Lopez and draw out those bigger reactions, like a leaping hook, and Ortega might be able to spin into an elbow. I think as the fight progresses, Ortega's gas tank will be better, especially if he can just keep stabbing and stabbing and stabbing at that gas tank of Lopez. Ortega already faced a similar style with Korean Zombie. Maybe Lopez isn't as flat-footed as the Korean Zombie, but they both like to look for those home run big power shots. I see Lopez probably winning the first round, but the first big moment of the fight is going to make him go wild and basically throw out the game plan and start throwing those big hooks. He did this against Evelev where he just started going crazy and crazy and crazy. I think Ortega will use his experience of staying composed and just wait for Lopez to gas himself out. So for this fight, my pick is going to be Brian Ortega, and I'm going to go with a decision win. I don't think he's powerful enough to knock Diego Lopez out, but I think he is smart enough to slow him down if he can get him down. But I will say this, I am scared for Brian Ortega's chin going up against Diego Lopez's power. Alright, we got the first UFC women's trilogy, at least at the championship level. I can't think of any other trilogy that's happened in the UFC. I'm going to make this one quick. I'm going to go with Alexa Grasso. She had the bigger moments in both fights, and I think that Valentina's age is going to catch up to her, or at least show the decline. I think we're going to see Alexa Grasso make big improvements. That being said, if Shevchenko goes to the grappling a lot, she could probably control Grasso. She got her into crucifix, she got her back multiple times, threw up multiple submissions, got full mount from a guillotine. Crazy. Grasso switched stances a lot in the second fight. I think she needs to go back to what she did in the first fight and stay southpaw. Don't respect Shevchenko at all and just go. Be wary of the takedown because Shevchenko did get the takedown so easily in both fights. I think Grasso just needs to pressure and not really give Shevchenko that much respect because she hits way harder than Shevchenko, but she may not be as technical. She needs to extend her punches 3, 4, 5 at a time and end with a kick. So that's what I'm going to say. I'm going to say Alexa Grasso. I'm going to go with the decision, I think. Viva la Mexico, cabrones. What can I say? Shevchenko's time is up, I think. It's Grasso's time. On to the main event. Alright, baby. Main event time. Let's go. I'm going to make this one clear. I'm going to make up from the very beginning. I think Sean O'Malley is going to knock out Merab Dvalishvili. I think he's going to knock out Merab. I think everyone that picked Sean is going off of the Henry Cejudo and Marlon Moraes fights that Merab faced. He got hit by the same exact combo from Henry Cejudo and Marlon Moraes, that straight right hand left hook. I don't think Sean O'Malley is going to do a left hook though. I think he's going to be able to go into the southpaw or orthodox and just catch Merab with one of those long straights. I think Sean's footwork is going to be able to keep him off the cage and keep it in the center. And he's too clean of a striker for Merab to get hit by. Probably either Marlon Moraes or Sean O'Malley are the two hardest punchers that Merab has faced. But I think that O'Malley might hit harder than Moraes because of the reach. He's able to really extend, especially if he can catch Merab one of those times when he's really trying to get that takedown and coming in. Sean can pump out a very powerful shot, like a piston, and knock Merab out. But like the last fight, it's super interesting because I could also see Merab just controlling Sean for 5 rounds. I don't think Sean's in danger of getting finished in this fight because you never really see Merab finish anyone. He's more of a controller. He wants to control you in these positions and really just wear on you. He doesn't really look for submissions or that big of ground and pound. He just wants to keep you working and wear you out. Like what I think his average fight time is like 15 minutes and 22 seconds, which a 3-round fight is only 15 minutes. So, but this one's championship, and I think Marab's gas tank is much better than O'Malley. I think he has probably the best gas tank in the entire freaking organization right now. But people need to start respecting Sean. I think he's not just a clown show. He's a very, very good fighter. He's very powerful. And we even saw in the third round Marab versus Henry Cejudo, we saw Cejudo tagging him up with some good leg kicks, even after being kind of embarrassed. He was able to get some good leg kicks off. I think that Sean should employ some of those to slow the shots down from Marab at least, and it'll give him more time to react. So yeah, to cap off UFC Noche, we're going to have the two Mexican warriors, Sean O'Malley and Merab. I think Sean's going to retain. It's very, very, very compelling fight. And we've also just seen Sean hit every single opponent with incredibly, incredibly big shots. Chito Vera, I don't know how he lived. He split open Jan with that knee, and then he knocked out Aljamain. Sean's going to be able to find at least one big shot in this fight. Just the question is it enough to knock out Merab? And even if he doesn't knock out Merab, is he going to stay composed enough to not get taken down by Merab? Because we saw Merab's insane recovery against Marlon and Cejudo. I mean, he took them down back. But I think Sean's going to be smart enough to stay composed in those moments and pick his shots and find his openings. I mean, he always does it. He never really goes super, super crazy unless he knows his opponent's really badly hurt. So with that being said, I'm going to go with Sean O'Malley. I think he's going to probably knock out Merab in the second round, and he's going to put off a capstone highlight reel to close out UFC Noche. I wanted to go more in depth in these championship level fights, but I'm rushing to get this video out because I want these gamblers to see, So yeah, if you like the video, make sure you subscribe, like it, share it. You know what to do. Hit that subscribe button with the head cake. You know what it is. Talk to y'all later.